Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Shred and Soul.
I'm Shred, a.k.a. Kevin Wood.
And I'm Soul, a.k.a. Wind Tears. We have a great episode for you. We're going to be looking into Kevin's history with Malfunction and music and his other bands and guitar playing. And when Kevin and I were setting up, getting our studio specs right, we were laughing about just some of the headlines in the world today. And in particular, the sibling battle going on between Trump and Musk, and how insane that can seem.
Yeah, Musk is his car that well, I guess Trump bought that car, but he wants to give it away or get rid of it. And I'll tell you what, it would be a collector's item. Yeah,
His red Tesla.
Yeah, that would be a collector's item for somebody.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah, like
the actual Tesla that Trump had for Musk back in the day.
Yeah, that'd be fun to have.
I wonder what he'd sell it for.
Probably more than we have right now.
He's a businessman. He knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah, and so this whole argument between Trump and Musk and watching that unfold. And I just kept thinking today, whomever is writing the script for this simulation we're in has a sense of humor and is doing an incredible job bringing together the best script writers, because you couldn't possibly predict where all of this is going to go. And probably by the time this airs on Tuesday, we'll all have changed. They'll be friends again and kissing and making up.
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
You don't think it's a psyop? Just playing one side against the other?
It could be a psyop, but they're not going to kiss and make up right away. If it is a psyop, they want to play it out for what it's worth, and I think it's probably worth a lot for them to do that. But it might not be a psyop. It might be a genuine
two pissy brothers, right?
Well,
two pissy friends.
Musk has a point though with the deficit, but
you and I said the same thing when we looked at the bill. Separate from the bill itself, which I wasn't too happy about, a number of things in there, but some are good, was I'm constantly watching, when the House meets and the Senate meets to talk about the budget, how the debt ceiling keeps going up and up and up. And certainly for us, if we were applying for credit and we were looking for a loan and we had such debt, outstanding, debt to income ratio, we'd be denied. They would not allow us to go into further debt.
This debt is a serious problem, and it's something that's been around our necks as taxpayers for way too long.
Yeah.
The servicing of the debt, the interest payments alone, is astronomical. And so, I think we were all really looking forward to seeing that go away. I don't know, Trump might have some plan, though, to, I don't know what his side, I haven't been paying too much attention to it, but it'll be fun to see how things shake out, because
it would only be fun for those who may not be impacted by some of these changes.
So far, in the last few days, no impact I've been able to detect. But for me.
For you. What about other people?
Send in your comments how you've been impacted. I haven't been paying attention to the whole thing, so I've just been hearing the headlines.
You've been too busy working, right?
Yeah.
Like most people. All right, we're onward now to more interesting things like malfunction and your history. And I think this stems from our discussing some of this and some of the interesting progression for you. And I was having fun listening to you talk about your first band in high school.
Yeah. Well, a band tryout in high school.
Oh, does that mean you didn't get the job?
I didn't get the gig.
Was it for guitar player?
Guitar player, yeah.
Who were these people? Do you even know where they were?
They were guys who could actually play, and I thought it would be easy, and I thought it was easy, and I thought I did fine, actually, at the tryout. But in retrospect, I didn't really know what I was doing at all. I just had my hands on the guitar, and I was hitting it. And that didn't translate well to the covers they were trying to put together.
So it was a cover band in high school. Do you remember their name?
No.
Do you remember the guys in it?
Not really. I remember them saying, "Oh, that Kevin can't play," and And I didn't take it to, I wasn't offended or hurt by it. I looked at that comment and I thought, maybe I should really learn how to play.
Really?
And yeah.
That motivated you.
It motivated me.
I think that happens to us a lot. We fail at something, or we aren't recognized in the way we think we should have, and it motivates us to progress further.
Yeah, it did actually. And, taking a little criticism, I had already known, I could play like open chords and strumming a guitar. I was really into rock and roll. And so at the time it was late 70s. And so I was influenced by, Hendrix and Page and then we always loved the guitar solos. And I think that it was really hard to try to determine how to get that sound out of a guitar when all I knew was strumming and acoustic. In fact, I took a course in high school, individual guitar instruction, where you taught yourself how to play an instrument.
How did you choose guitar in general?
Well, because it was, it was so cool to have guitars, and I wanted to emulate my heroes. It was all about
Like
music back
K.K.
then.
Downing and
Well, the K.K. Downing thing came later, but I was influenced by pop culture, and I just loved the sound of the guitar, and I gravitated towards that. In fact, the first album I've ever bought with my own money was Rush's first album. And I bought that because they used to play Working Man on the radio all the time. And the soloing in Working Man was just magical for my ears to hear. I couldn't comprehend how anything could create that sound, the excitement, I wasn't looking at it or listening to it technically at all. I was just the overall feeling that gave me hearing this Alex Lifeson. He was probably 18 when he recorded it or something, Prodigy. But, that sound just captured me, and I wanted to emulate it, but I couldn't figure out how to do that on an acoustic guitar. And when I would listen to Ted Nugent or, something with some chunky rhythms, I'm thinking of, Dog Eat Dog or Cat Scratch Fever. You could kind of hammer that out on the acoustic a little bit, but it wasn't that same crushing sound. So it was elusive to me. It was magical, something that it was almost unattainable. Until somebody gave me a fuzz box, and it was called the Fuzzy Was It. And it was probably something from the 60s, And it had a setting on it that would give you a crunchy fuzz or a very smooth fuzz.
For the non-guitar players out there, can you explain what exactly that box does and what captivates?
Okay, everyone's heard Rolling Stone's Satisfaction, right? That sound is through a fuzz box. And practically all of Jimi Hendrix really crazy stuff is all fuzz. So, you put that in between your guitar and your amplifier, and you have instant success.
I think that that's something that a lot of folks don't understand, is that a lot of the effect you get is through a pedal or a fuzz box or something else, that if the guitar was just plugged in as it is, it has its own sound, but that you can tweak the sound, and desired sound can be created by the equipment that you're using.
Yeah. Well, there are amplifiers that'll make that sound, but as far as that was, in the 70s, if you had a Marshall amp, basically you had to turn it up way up to get it to sound like the rock and roll that you heard on the radio. And that was something that was impossible to do in most situations. So it was elusive. It wasn't easy back then to dial in a sound. And I remember once I figured out, the fuzz box going into the amp, there you go. And this is kind of how it's done. And then I took it from there. I started experimenting with the chords I knew. And then somebody would show me, the bar chord. Oh, well, this is definitely sounding like rock. And So I just took it from there with that tool that was so elusive. It was difficult to find that key, but once I did, it was no turning back.
How do you look at the way guitar and instruments are processed now? For example, for I can't remember if it was your birthday or Christmas, you wanted the Modeler Pro, what's it called? The Pro
Oh,
Go.
yeah. I got a,
And you explained to me how that would work. And, you didn't have to bring all your gear with you. You could have this and you could replicate any of the sounds that you wanted to. So how does that compare to, say, the original gear that you had and how your use of gear has evolved? And then would you use, because you have used a modeler, and how do you compare all that? Because I know that's a conversation I see in some of the guitar magazines you have.
well, modelers, I do have like a Pod Go, which is, it's kind of sort of the bottom end of the pod spectrum, but I'd used the pod things before, and it's just not as good as a straight signal into an amp coming out being mic'd. It's very good though, and very handy because, in fact, I've been recording with it a lot, and the tracks that I send people, they really can't tell that it's coming from a modeler. And so in that regard, and when I go jam with people, it's really fun to be able to just plug that into a PA, and there you go. But there's just so many presets that, well, not presets, they're options on some of these devices are just, oh, you can tweak this, you can tweak that, you can change all of these settings.
Can you get the sound that you got from your early gear, some of which you still have in your studio?
Well, no, I don't think so. Not in the room, anyway. Maybe recorded.
We
I
went
don't
to
know,
see
it's handy to
someone.
have.
Well, we went to see someone recently, or the last year or two. I don't know if it was Ingve or someone else. And you were pointing out to me, because your eyes are much better at a distance, how they had modelers instead of the big heavy gear that other bands were carrying around. Do you remember who that was? It was
No.
some guitar player.
No, I don't
I can't remember,
that.
but we were talking about that because all of a sudden they didn't have stacks of stuff everywhere except the house system. And they were plugged
Well,
directly
it's
into
definitely
it.
not Ingve.
Who was it?
Ingve has a wall.
A wall. But that's, wasn't it? You're right. And it was someone who you were talking about how interesting it is that they would be traveling with that instead of a full, house of gear.
Yeah, it is very handy in that regard. And as far as like playing a club or even a larger venue, I could see the beauty of that. The only thing that you would not have, perhaps in a better way, is the interaction between you and the amp, which, us 70s guys all know that you can stand here and get feedback, or you can stand here and not get feedback, or you can change your feedback sound by moving around a little bit and then taking the guitar and putting it up next to the amp, or leaning it on the amp, or taking that sound and just creating this crazy feedback. Throw on some fuzz and some echo, and you've got what we saw early Uli Roth when he was doing that whammy bar solo. Yeah, we were just
Pretty
so
amazing.
lucky to see that. And
Yeah.
it was basically delay, fuzz, really powerful amp, guitar.
Yeah. So I know that, so many times when you've recorded something or you're playing the end of a show or you play something back to me, you'll critique it and you can tell the difference in the sound, or this wasn't quite perfect. The difference between real gear and a modeler, if I was in the audience with the level of understanding that I have, I probably wouldn't notice the difference.
No,
So if
you
you're playing at a venue and you're trying to travel lightly, because I know and you know that when we've produced shows and gone on the road, just with your band, that's a lot of gear and it's expensive to lug around. And so if the audience per se wouldn't know the difference, you might with your critical ear, but why wouldn't someone use that if they're touring?
Well, a lot of people do, and I think it's a good idea for touring because I don't think it really makes a difference to the audience. It's just for the player. hearing your amp, if you're that used to doing that. There's a whole generation of players out here today probably don't even have amps or know what an amp sounds like or even know how to turn one on.
Yeah.
And that's not a slag on anybody who's like that because, hey, things change.
Well, yeah, it's evolved and grown. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, and gone are the days of kind of lugging your band in the back of a station wagon and traveling the country and just showing up. That doesn't happen much anymore.
Yeah.
So you're trying to cut costs when you're on the road, or especially if you're a band that's paying it for yourself.
Yeah. And there's all kinds of ways to do that these days, too. And it's getting better and better. I think soon it'll be indistinguishable, the modeler versus the real. But, when you're recording, so much of what you're recording has to do with the preamps on your board and how good all of that is. And your microphones, your microphone placement, the production, It
reminds me of when I did photography, darkroom photography, the regular old camera with film in it, and we would take out the trays, and by modifying the chemistry or the timing, and we were able to change how this print evolved. And I remember when digital, kind of dating myself, digital cameras were first coming out, and purist photographers were saying, I will never use a digital camera. You can never replace what you could do here in the darkroom and have this level of control. And now it's hard to find anyone that's, doing it the old way, and everything's digital. I mean, you look at what we have now with digital cameras and movies and AI, and it was just a little while ago that conversation was happening. So I'm seeing the similarity with purists like you who really like your gear, your hardcore gear. I mean, you've shown people what's in your studio, but yet you're understanding what the modeler provides you.
Yeah, I actually prefer to take my modeler when I go play with people, and it's so much easier, and the sound is decent. It has too many features on it, which is like, if I buy a piece of gear, a pedal or something, and it has too many things or an amp, too many knobs, I just go blank, and I can't deal with it, and I'll just use the presets on the machine if they have any.
Is that like setting your camera to automatic?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But even, with photographs, if you take a photograph and you print it out, right? If you scan it, you can shop it. So basically, and you'd probably want to do that and then print it out again with the enhancements that you've done with the computer. I mean, it seems like a backwards kind of thing, and you might take pride in having a perfect photograph, but hey, all photographs, very few of them ever turn out perfect.
Well, God, you can remove people from your photographs now. I mean, and what you can do now is insane. And I think with music, the same. I remember when I was in Taos, New Mexico, quite a while ago, and I was hosting a number of radio shows, and I was part of the staff there doing a few things. And I remember we were recording, and they were showing me how to, correct pitch and things like that. And I was seeing this back end reality of how someone could be there speaking or singing and performing, and just technically what they could do to falsify the quality, remove words, or looking at a podcast program that was taking out the like I just said. There's certain little things you can do to tighten up and perfect, which is interesting to me, because the rawness of a sound and the rawness of a photograph, the rawness of saying, it's real. And how much do we create an artificial sense of perfection, and does it even matter?
Yeah.
Just questions artistically.
Well, that's an interesting point, because even with the guitar playing, right? So much of the representation of your guitar playing, or any kind of musical recording, any kind of recording at all, actually, but you have the player, you have the guitar, and that generates a signal that goes into an amplifier that comes out. And between that, you have a player who's worked a long time, or maybe not so long, but can play music. You have a guitar that took somebody a long time to put together and evolve and turn this thing into a musical instrument of quality, whatever quality that might be. You have another interface with your amplifier that might need new tubes, might be perfect, might be set up excellently, is going through some speakers that are perfect for that tube or that setup. And then you have a microphone that may or may not be a good microphone or average microphone going into a preamp that goes into an interface that turns it into a sound that you can play back. With the modeler, you're eliminating everything between the guitar and the recording.
So are you saying in your first description there were many places where the actual artistic expression could be compromised or corrupted?
Mm-hmm.
And are you saying with the modeler you remove a lot of that?
Basically,
and you get a more accurate representation?
You are, but my point is this: if everything is perfect between the guitar and the recording interface, and you have all of these efforts involved and it turns out great and it sounds perfect, I think that's more valuable than plugging something into a console and going, man, this sounds perfect. It might sound the same, it might be inferior, it might be different, but there's something about that old school way of like putting it together that would give a lot of people pride. Mm-hmm. And I think that your engineer, and if you're hiring an engineer or you are the engineer, the end result is partially yours. Those are engineering credits,
Well, that makes me think again of photography and how, the camera wasn't automatic. And so, adjusting the speed, the light, everything, the distance, the contrast, everything was impacted by my settings. Mm-hmm. And if my settings were good, then it would be represented in the process in the darkroom. But if I screwed up the chemistry or I didn't keep it in the fixer long enough, my perfect photo that I achieved with the camera wouldn't be represented well in what came out of the darkroom process. Mm-hmm. So there were places in taking the photograph and then producing the photograph. And so I would think that using digital cameras now, even though I like that darkroom experience and I like the challenge of getting it really right in a camera setting, there's something really nice about picking up that camera and knowing that I have some control over the settings, but it's going to really reproduce what I'm seeing very accurately. Mm-hmm. And that's going to translate to what, can be printed out or what can be shared on social media or through a computer.
Right. But isn't it interesting? We both end our chain of creation with a computer. I said interface.
Right, exactly.
And I'm old enough. I remember recording on tape.
Yeah. I remember taking the prints. I have tons of them in my boxes. Mm-hmm. Of taking the prints, and there was for a while it was in our bathroom. There was a string hung across the bathtub. Probably many people did this. And I had clothespins. Mm-hmm. Remember those?
Yeah.
Clothespins to hang the photograph on the string and keeping it very dark. We had red lights, whatever the lights were that we had that you could use for a darkroom in the bathroom, and a lock on the outside so no one would open the door. And we waited that amount. But yeah. Mm-hmm. Now it's in a computer, and I like being able to navigate it this way in an instant picture instead of hours later.
Yeah, that's
but it
something.
Was exciting.
It was fun, and it was if you see, you could screw up at any point in that process, but if you didn't, your end result would be that much more enjoyable.
And that was exciting.
Yeah.
It was a challenge, and I liked that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I know. See, that's one of the differences between modelers and amps. Is that, well, it's like an instant gratification, although I do like my modeler. And I like taking an analog preamp and running it into a speaker simulator, because I'm just like, I'm not really interested in all the bells and whistles all the time. I just want to get one sound, make it sound like rock and roll, like a good distorted amp, like a Marshall or a Boogie or something, and call it good without worrying about like tweaking all of these settings. It just drives me crazy.
I understand.
It's like Photoshop. I used to love working with Photoshop, and I still do every once in a while, but there are so many things that you can do with it. It's mind-boggling. And who's got the time?
Well, that's kind of the world, whether it's medicine or anything else. Everyone is a specialist in something. Whereas before, anyone could do a little bit of everything, and you didn't have to have such vast expertise. I mean, there were certain things with the camera and with the chemicals and developing film, but it wasn't like it is now.
No.
You need a professional degree almost in Photoshop.
Yeah.
That's complicated.
But you don't even really need Photoshop anymore. You take a picture with your phone and you look at it and you click
You
edit
do it now.
and you go touch a couple things and go, it looks better. It's supposed to.
I know. All right. So how about, I want to make sure we talk about your bands in the early days and just the progression of your sound. Because you had bands after Malfunction, and each one of those was similar but different. And I know a lot of people know you through Malfunction, but other people know you through Fire Ants or Hippie Glitz or Devilhead. And each one of those had a similarity of the sound, but a little different. So can you talk about that?
Well, I don't know. Basically what I did is I took my fuzz box, I learned how to make some chunky sounds, and evolved through that. Is super influenced by Jimi Hendrix and K.K. Downing, two of the best whammy bar guys on the planet. And I thought, with the distortion and the knowledge of chords and stuff, it would be enough. And it was actually for a while, but I got tired of doing that all the time and started to learn how to articulate some notes and stuff. So, watching my buddies play gave me inspiration, learning this or that, finding out where to put your fingers in certain areas of the neck where they would relate together and you could play. I went forward with that knowledge. But you wanted to know about post-Malfunction?
When I listened to Fire Ants, I could see the similarities in your playing, but the music's different. How do you align with that? How do you play differently or similarly, different sound? It's different music.
It's a growth process. And Fire Ants came out after Andy passed away, and Malfunction was just sitting there as like a non-entity for a little while, and there was also like an ability that I had during the end of that era that I didn't have before. I wanted to continue, and so I got heavily into blues rock and started really paying attention to how blues rock was put together, and just really enjoying that vibe.
Was Fire Ants influenced more by that?
Yes, it was. It was more of a blues rock group, with elements of punk.
It's interesting you call it blues rock, because I wouldn't see it that way at all.
Yeah, and
it's harder to me than a blues rock. I could see punkish elements in it.
That's why I said it had punkish elements in it. Yeah. And then Devilhead was just like Fire Ants, but it had a little bit of more of a, I don't know, like a lounge feel, though. We did some adult contemporary kind of things. And this all came about, with my guitar growth. I mean, I didn't stop at playing whammy bar solos. Wild Man with a Whammy Bar is great, and you could make a career out of it, but I wanted to evolve my playing. I was more captivated by music than anything else. I mean, growing and playing music and learning how to play became more of a passion to me, I think, than actually anything else. It's just a riddle that will never be able to be figured out. And I just marvel today at the way that the kids are they have everything at their fingertips to be able to figure out how to play the most complex things. And I learn from that now too, but in the old days, it was like, put on the record. And, part of it was wanting to have fun. And part of it was knowing that all of my heroes developed their own sounds, basically in a way that was derivative of something else. And so I would keep that in mind. And I would try to learn or play along with my favorite guitar hero. And I consciously understood that I was developing my own style. Like, I would have my own style that would be purely mine. And that was, for me, good enough, because I could refine that style with every little bit of information that I could get along the way. And I was never pigeonholed into playing one particular way. So when I would change bands or go into different projects, I would bring with me not only the past, but what I'd been working on up to that point. And so that's why my playing is different from these eras onward, and continues to evolve to this day.
Yet you do have a signature style.
Mm-hmm.
I call it a flurry. You have a signature style that comes through, even into Devilhead, which came after Hippie Glitz. What would you call your signature style? I mean, I can hear it and describe it. What would you call it, that flavor that carries through even to now?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's part of what I developed out of just wham jamming, and I think that particular style was showcased in All Hail the Crown, probably more than anything else, because that was like the ultimate evolution of that wham jamming, just like it's like a blizzard. When you see a blizzard in your car windshield and you're driving and the snow's coming at you and there's just so many flakes, that's kind of what that playing would be like in my mind's eye. And it doesn't convey sadness or happiness or any sort of like tangible emotion, except like, what the fuck, and it was designed in order to just blow your mind. And I think that's part of like just pure rock and roll. It's kind of an escapism into another realm where there's no like fretting about missed opportunity or a girlfriend breaking up or like a new car in your driveway or any kind of tangible human emotion. It's like, I think what I was trying to represent, and what I do try to represent in those cases, is like, oh my God, I'm here, and this is like so separate from reality, day-to-day reality.
Well, I think many musicians describe that transcendent aspect of their art.
Mm-hmm.
Like any art or anything you immerse yourself in, you lose yourself. You have that transcendent place,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is that you're doing, and you lose yourself. That flurry, that blizzard you described, that's an aspect of your signature sound.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a good visual of what that is, because, I call you the guitar ninja, but you don't like, because you think it's appropriation. But he's like that, because you can't see his fingers moving sometimes or see what he's doing. You'd have to want to slow it down into slow motion to see where your fingers are actually landing. And that's the blizzard.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing when I do that. Really. And that's how far out there I am when that happens. It's like, okay, and then I just let it go. And
what does that mean in terms of guitar playing? Okay, I just let it go. That you don't know what you're doing.
I
in that
don't think
moment.
about it. It just happens.
From muscle memory, from what?
Yeah,
cellular memory?
All memory of doing it over and over. And, and what's fun to do is, and this is something that I picked up from Jimmy Page, actually, because I've heard a lot of bootlegs and a lot of, live recordings of him, where he would just play a flurry of notes. And then all of a sudden he'd lean into a melody that would capture the the essence of the song, or create something memorable that would be like a hooky kind of line that, everything else up to that point was like a blizzard of notes, and then all of a sudden he leans in and finds something that was, poignant. I don't know. That's kind
like
of,
he's casting his net out there into the notes until they line into something.
and
they line up.
That's my approach too. I'll see when if I get a recording project, I'll just turn it on and just blow, right? And then I'll listen to it, and there's going to be one part where I just totally got to find something that's going to be repeatable. I might harmonize that part. I mean, keep everything up to that, or just, experiment with it. It's kind of like a process of letting go of everything and then finding something.
I don't know if this is similar, but it reminds me of folks that I've known who do stone sculptures. And I remember one guy saying to me, the stone tells me what it wants to become.
Mm-hmm.
And that I may have an idea, it's going to be a female, or it's going to be a buffalo, or, but I start it and then I let the stone tell me, and it appears through the stone. And I just had that sense when you're saying like you're casting out, and then Jimmy Page, it becomes something.
Yeah.
That it's similar to that friend of mine saying that he allowed the stone to tell him what it was to become.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's in a nutshell, I think, the approach. Mm-hmm. I might study a little bit on the chord progression, or, if something I made up, I know where I'm going to go on the neck. But, I like to know where it's going to be. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just sense it and I just go there. Because when I was learning to play I still do it every now. I still do it actually a lot. Just turn something on and just play along with it and figure it out. Just not by studying it or stopping. A lot of times I just find it, and then find where things work, and just keep doing it. And song after song, I used to listen to the radio and turn on the radio and play for 2, 3, 4 hours along with every song that came on the radio, and just play lead guitar over the whole thing. So I got a lot of time just improvising.
Well, there's something more behind it too, and I think of it. We were talking about, if someone came to you and said, "How do I do what you do?" Or if I have a person that's a student and wants to know, how do I achieve these transcendent moments? And I talk about commitment, doing something simple that may seem over and over and over, and committing to it forever, committing to it. And that's what you, and I think many musicians or artists or anyone who commits to mastering something, say when we watch the Olympic ice skaters, and they are so graceful, or the gymnastics. They make it seem as if that leg lifting is a feather. And you and I know that it's years worth of building those muscles and practicing those moves. The amount of discipline and practice and commitment behind it, that in that moment, their spontaneous movement or the choreographed movement looks effortless. And I know that you are and have been eternally committed to your guitar. And I was telling you earlier that to me, you have a relationship with this instrument, and you hardly ever have it out of your hands. You are constantly practicing, constantly learning, and it has been a life choice of yours to achieve mastery. And I know that I was listening to Bono on Joe Rogan talk about how he's just becoming the singer he's wanted to become after all these years. And it's always a mastery, always wanting to perfect. And so you may be there in that moment, just letting it go. But behind that is an incredible amount of discipline and expertise, like the ice skater that has the strength now to just let it flow.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I push myself when I practice. I'll learn complicated stuff. But when it comes down to actually pulling it off, you know immediately if it's going to be there or not. And, especially when you're on the spot. And so I'll revert back to what feels good and natural. And so it's taking the little things that I learned along the way and incorporating that into the automatic pilot, kind of thing where it just comes out. You don't think about it. And I think that's where the fun and the challenge and what keeps me coming back is not knowing what's around the corner while I'm playing and not caring and having it work. Because when it all kind of comes together and you're just flowing with it and you're in the moment, it's just, it's an incredible feeling. And I know that can sound a little cliche coming from a guitar player, but that's the allure. For me, is that freedom and that space of being completely in the moment. It's really a lot of fun. Yeah.
And a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And commitment.
But even when I wasn't as good, I could still do that. With it's like I was telling a guy the other day, is you don't necessarily have to know everything, or know how, or it could be a complete Andres Segovia or whatever to make music on a guitar. You can have rudimentary skills, but you can still make music. And music is music, and there's no two ways about it. It's either music or it's not.
Well, I think music, and again, I can paint. I've painted at times in my life. I think when I painted, I made some really nice pieces. I am not a master. I am not a master painter. And so I can play guitar. I haven't in years. It's very intimidating. I stopped playing around him. He's like a masterful person, and I'm over here on my acoustic. But you, I think, are beyond someone in terms of your commitment that just sits and plays for joy. I could sit and play for joy, pure joy, make music for pure joy. Your commitment to it's different. I watch you practice and play something for years. I mean, there are times you've said to me, I have been practicing this progression for years, and I'm just getting it. And that's a mastery. Joe, in the same interview, if you haven't seen it, it's great, Bono and Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's a martial art expert, but he was talking about, as a fighter, if you ever, people who want to do it professionally, and it made me think of something like you playing guitar, that as a fighter, if there's any point, because young people would say, what do I need to do? And should I continue this or not? As soon as that question comes up, he says, don't do it. That as a fighter, if there's any question about whether you should be doing this or not, you shouldn't be there. Because in that moment in a competition, there's a person who is 100% committed and has never wavered, and that person's going to kick your ass. You're going to die. But that same sense is you've never had a question. I know there have been times in your life when, you had young kids and you had different jobs where you couldn't play it the way you wanted to, but you've never questioned that you're a guitar player.
No, that's true. And I've had my share of creating the very non-musical moments too. I mean, it doesn't always work out. And those are discouraging, of course, but I learned from my mistakes, and I will go back. And I just end up doing it, I can say, well, God, that was sort of a big screw up. I feel so depressed. I don't think I want to do this anymore. But then the next day I'm, back on the horse.
Your identity as a guitar player. I can't imagine you ever saying, I don't want to play guitar anymore.
Yeah,
I just can't imagine that happening.
Yeah, so it happens every once in a while.
I mean, for maybe a week, a day, never a week, a
never
day.
A week.
A day or
a couple
two.
Hours.
Exactly.
Because I'll pick
player.
it up and I'll go, God, this is so hard today. Why am I doing this? I don't know. It's just so ingrained in me now. I'm glad I did it, though. It's been a lot of fun, and so it's a very enjoyable thing.
You enjoy it.
I do.
It's what you breathe.
Well, sort of.
It is. You could not live on some level without a guitar.
I suppose not.
Truly. I think if for some reason you couldn't play a guitar, who's the guy who couldn't play anymore? You saw the movie about him? The guitar player, the paralysis that he had? Or
Jason Becker.
yeah. I mean, watching this guitar player who is just amazing suddenly not be able to play. What was do you remember the name of that movie?
Yeah, I'm Not Dead Yet.
I'm Not Dead Yet. If you haven't seen it, the story of
Jason Becker.
Yeah, and what happened to him with his illness and no longer being able to play.
Yeah.
If that happened to you, I don't know how you'd go on.
In his short span of guitar playing notoriety, I mean, he's created a legend for himself, and people who are serious about playing shred guitar know all about him and are still copying his licks today. His licks weren't necessarily all his. He took a lot from Yngwie, but he took it a little bit further, I think, in many ways, because of his incredible dexterity. The kid was just amazing.
I'm Not Dead Yet is the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Definitely recommend that film. Anything else you want to say before we...
No, I guess we just sort of touched on a lot of stuff. We'll come back to this topic again, though, because, I'd like to talk about some of the experiences in the studio I had with recording some of the things like the Deep Six and the Back to Olympus, the various albums I've recorded and people I've played with, and stuff like that. But yeah, we can save that for another episode.
Okay. Well, that was fun for me. Was it fun for you?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for being here and hanging out with us and sharing in the conversation. Please subscribe. We definitely need subscribers. It helps us out a lot. And comment. We love your comments. And the conversation between us all is really enjoyable.
Yeah, and I've got my own YouTube channel where I post myself playing guitar.
What's it called?
I can't remember, Kevin Wood or something. I don't know. We'll put a link to it.
We'll link it in the description.
Yeah, I post stuff on my Instagram and Facebook too.
Of you playing, right?
My playing, yeah. I just throw up the phone or a camera in my room and just jam. And so yeah, maybe I'll check that out.
Okay. So until next time, and by the time we record our next podcast, we'll know whether Trump and Musk have kissed and made up, or whether they're getting a divorce.
Do they kiss and make up or get a divorce? I think it's going to be a divorce. Yeah,
and a bitter battle.
Yeah, then we've got two.
Who gets custody of the power?
Two mega personalities going at it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting to watch history unfold. Okay, till next time. Bye.
Okay, bye.